Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today here at SimpleFi Solutions for our introduction to SAP's PaPM webinar. Here with us today presenting is our client partner, Eric Blondin. He is going to take us through the session today. Thank you, Eric. Let's get started.
Thank you, Corrine. So welcome everyone. So today's objective is really to give you an insight as to PaPM. I'll assume you'll have watched a few of our previous webinars around SAC planning. So a lot of the content around it. I'm going to summarize it very quickly in my first few slides. And then DataSphere. I've done a few webinars on that subject as well. And some of you may even have attended some of my DataSphere training. So these two tools are really in the data analytics space at SAP. But there's a third tool that SAP is positioning in there, and today's objective is really to kind of clarify what is PaPM, where does it position itself in there, and in which context would you actually want to use it. But first, before I actually start, I will introduce myself, talk quickly about SimpleFi. Obviously, that's not the point of the conversation, but it makes it easier when you understand who you're talking to. And then we'll go directly into tool, a few slides explaining what the platform is. And today is not a full-blown demo, so I will go into tool just so you can get a feel of how the tool is organized. But then obviously, if you want to get in touch with us, follow up what scenarios you feel you'd like to see in there, please do not hesitate to mention them. If not, I'll have mentioned a few in my presentation, and we will be using later on in further webinars. Okay, last note, I'm up north, so there have been some snowstorms today. I've lost power twice already this morning, so fingers crossed this won't be happening in the next hour. So first of all, I'm Eric Blondin. I've been I'm with SimpleFi. I've been with SimpleFi for 5 years now, but I've been in this field, and I just realized I forgot to make that change. I've been in the field for over 25 years now, around BI and planning, leading some different teams, working mostly in Canada and the US, but also I've lived in Europe a few years, really in that, getting more familiar in that space and understanding what kind of projects are there. Specifically, I'm kind of started outside the SAP world, but I've really been in the SAP world now for a good 20 years. So it's really the core of my career. Been started in the SAP space really around BW, also became BW trainer, did over 50 projects since then. And now obviously today I lead the platform and technology space at SimpleFi. And so that's everything around the different solutions we deliver. About SimpleFi specifically, so we're a firm of partners really focused on business process design, business content, and really all we do is planning, analytics, and consolidation. So everything I'm going to talk about today is, again, around this subject area. PaPM can do more than that, and I may hint at it, but the area in which we focus is really there. We're one of SAP's main go-to partners for SAP Analytics Cloud, and our objective is always 100% references. We are not a big four, so every single small reference is extremely important for us. So the moment you do business with us, you're not just another customer, you're the customer we focus on. So we do business services around design, implementation, a lot of business content deployment. I'll get back to that in a few slides. And we also offer, obviously, project fixes and expert as a service offering. The technologies we focus on, and you'll notice very quickly that one of them is the subject of today's call. Most of them are now in what is called the BTP stack. So SAP Analytics Cloud for reporting and planning, DataSphere for data warehousing and what is termed as the data fabric nowadays, and PaPM, which is really today's subject. There are other legacy solutions we focus on, although right nowadays it's mostly around maintaining them, but these were some of our core specialties over the years. And group reporting is another tool that is more focused within the S4 space for consolidation again. So whatever these tools are, we always come back to these main three areas in which we focus. And then we've invested a lot in content that we're able to deliver for our customers, and we've actually won a few awards based on that content while competing against other SAP partners. So when we talk about our content today in SAC planning, yes, we've built a lot of pre-built planning process areas. So a lot of them are listed on screen around HR planning, corporate P&L planning, balance sheet, and a lot of the other financial planning areas that are really companies focus on today. So we've built content to really accelerate and help us roll out these SAP solutions. But in some cases, some scenarios are more complex than SAC planning can cover. And that's actually where I'll be positioning PaPM today. So we cover a lot of complex FP&A processes around budgeting, about forecasting, but sometimes you do have some scenarios where maybe you could figure out a way in SAC, but maybe PaPM can really help you out. So just quickly today, when we work in SAC, we work with different components that all are modeled separately, but really flow into one final solution. So as you can see here, we can start with costs around HR planning that flows into expense planning. So you see that flow here. And then finally, this feeds into your P&L. And in some cases around your expense planning, you also have capital costs. So these would also impact your balance sheet. So you're really able to have a full-on planning environment and fully contained SAC. Something else I'll be showing you today is how sometimes for only small parts in this, you can call PaPM to just manage some complex rules that SAC may be able to do it, but maybe it won't be efficient, won't be as flexible as you want. And again, that's where PaPM will come and help you out. So that's a quick introduction about SimpleFi and our content. Now, where does that PaPM position itself in all these tools? So if we look at some standard SAP slides to kind of position ourselves in this world. So first of all, when we talk about a BTP, so that's the acronym for SAP Business Technology Platform. Okay, so you have app development. So this is way more than the old app. Automation, like robotic process automation, so managing forms that come in instead of doing it manually. Integration, so that can be data integration, as the last one implies, but also integration with a lot of different tools. So these are really areas where SAP is really focused typically, and obviously you probably have heard about AI. If you haven't, maybe you should just do one keyword in Google and you'll find a lot of information on it. But obviously SAP is not staying on the side on this subject. So AI is one of the core components in BTP as well, where they're strongly investing. The one we're focusing at SimpleFi though is really around data and analytics. So database, data management, data warehouse, analytics, and planning. In the context of PaPM, today I'm really going to be focusing a bit more on the planning side of things, but where typically planning is SAC planning, as I mentioned, and I'm going to talk about where PaPM can enhance it. That does not mean we do not touch anything else in the BTP world. For example, AI right now is really being embedded within the data and analytics, because what is AI without data? But our core focus is really around optimizing these analytics and planning requirements. So you have your planning and analytics, you have SAP DataSphere, you have SAP HANA Cloud. These are the typical pillars you would see if you go in regular BTP presentations. Where this fourth pillar comes in is where you get people from finance a bit more involved, because PaPM, and I'm getting to it in the next slide, is really finance focused. You'll see it where you look at the different subject areas where PaPM is used, what kind of rules it can cover. It's really focused on a lot of business processes around finance. I'm sure you can find business areas where it could also help, but most of this kind of standard examples are really around finance, and you'll get it in a few moments. So PaPM. So I kept on using the acronym on purpose, because here the whole name, SAP Profitability and Performance Management, cloud, obviously, we talked about SAC as SAP Analytics Cloud, DataSphere, which is a cloud data warehouse, data fabric environment, and now SAP Profitability and Performance Management Cloud. It's quite a mouthful, so I'll go back to saying PaPM, but still, on the slide, I use a whole name just so it kind of goes in as to what really it focuses on. So it's really around self-service. So self-service, you'll see where for finance analysts that are working with hundreds of Excel files nowadays, they can build very intense solutions in Excel, but at some point maintaining it becomes quite hard. So within PaPM, there's a whole business calculation that you can automate in there and reuse. And then you can configure those workflows. So this file kind of drops into this file, and then you have these different calculations, and you build out all your processes within the tool so you can really rerun them regularly, make small adjustments. So PaPM really allows you to cover a lot of complex allocations. I remember a few years ago now, one of my core customers wanted to have a planning solution in which there were some pretty intense allocation rules. So SAC does allocations. We can do a lot around allocations in SAC, but at a certain extent, when you have huge volumes combined with complex calculations, SAC can become a bit harder to use and be efficient in your allocation rules. So that's where PaPM would have been useful in that project. So we ended up building it. Solution was slower than we wanted in SAC because a lot of that calculation was done in backend through SAC. SAC is quite flexible, but again, large volume with complex calculations, it can take a while to get somewhere. And in some cases, we actually had the volume issues as well. So this is a scenario where 2 years ago, when I did that project, if PaPM Cloud had been positioned, would have really have helped us. At that time, PaPM Cloud was really just starting. PaPM itself has been around for quite a while, but like all cloud projects, when you start rolling it out in the cloud, you don't want to bring in an on-premise solution. You're not too sure where that's going to go. Nowadays, that on-premise solution being available in the cloud is really something that enhances this whole environment. So that's where now we have Ana Cloud, DataSphere, PaPM, and Analytics Cloud all together when we really are trying to understand what we can do from a data and analytics perspective in an SAP landscape. Now you're probably wondering, okay, so we have this, but what else can it do? How does it differentiate? First of all, you'll be able to get the slide deck. Just drop me a note after the webinar, and I'll be able to drop the slide deck. In it, I included SAP's official one-pager. Sorry, I'll get there. So this is SAP's official one-pager, and really what you need to, the keywords I think we should pay attention to is amplify. Okay, so it says advanced, activate with speed and agility, everything. So these are probably keywords we see for every single tool I mentioned today. But the amplify component is really where you want to go deeper. You want to have more details. You want to have more complex rules. So you don't just want a summary on your screen and some calculations in the back end by product and other. You want to go further. Maybe you want to really go down throughout the whole complete BOM planning. So a 12-level BOM with different costs at different level and different criterias. You'd like to apply that in your plan. Try to do that in SAC. We have simple BOM planning, typically 1 or 2 level BOMs where you can have components within others. That works okay. But the moment you start having multi-level BOMs with a lot of criterias, this is where we talk about you want to go deeper in your analysis, you want richer insights, and you also want more advanced capabilities, which is the other keyword here. So amplify, remember that. So most of the time you can probably figure out how to do something out in SAC and DataSphere. Actually, I'm saying probably you would, but the moment you have large volumes, complex rules, and I'm repeating these two every time because this is really where the differentiator is. you want more flexibility on those large volumes and complex rules, this is where PaPM will really be able to help you out. And where do we position it? So typically you would have your HANA Cloud environment. So today, PaPM really works with directly on a HANA Cloud database. SAP is currently working so that it kind of can run on DataSphere. This is not released yet, but this is, at least it can work with DataSphere, bring in data from DataSphere, can bring data from HANA Cloud. And yes, since SAP Analytics Cloud also stores data, we're also able to bring in data, and that's actually the example I'm going to be walking through. So you have PaPM Cloud that works with all these different tools, can reuse the data you've already calculated, but it can really build out detailed results in HANA Cloud, and then you decide, do I want to access it through DataSphere or SAP Analytics Cloud? There's some reporting components available also, and I'll get to them in 2 slides. But typically what we do from a PaPM perspective, now that it kind of works in this space, is that we will be building out the structure in HANA Cloud, processing the data, potentially keeping the detailed results in DataSphere, and building out the reports in SAP Analytics Cloud. Something else we've done as well is typically, since you can do excuse me, since you can do a whole planning process within PaPM, someone could decide to do the whole budget using only PaPM, not SAC, SAP Analytics Cloud. But as you'll see, the interface for end users can require a bit more involvement, and it's not as straightforward, it's not easy to share. So if you want to decentralize a bit more your planning process, this is really the added value that SAC brings you. So again, the inputs, you take them on the SAC side, the data storage, you take it really on the DataSphere side, and PaPM, which can technically do these 2 things, would really focus on the processing of those different business rules. Okay, as mentioned, you could decide to put everything in here, but this kind of results in centralizing it, because as you'll see, the interface, it needs people to get familiar with. So it's typically people who really focus on these allocations or other complex planning requirements. So within the tool, you'd have your typical environments. So you set up corporate budgeting, and then maybe some activity-based costing and some BOM planning, as I mentioned. So you could set all of these up. You model them within PaPM. You can kind of sequence the actual process, and in that modeling, this is where we've kind of included also some SAC planning. So the inputs that are done can be pushed to PaPM. And then when you get the results, you bring them back and can analyze them in SAC as well. So typically you end up with only one analytical tool. So you can do quite a few amazing stuff in the reporting tool in PaPM, but again, it's very limited to that environment. So some scenarios may be easier to do in PaPM, but in most cases, you'll want to centralize your results within SAC. And then obviously there's Excel integration as you want to bring uploads and maybe interface with it. Again, in this case, maybe you want to use the Excel interface more with SAC, so to keep these interfaces only in one location. But you're able to maintain the data directly in PaPM. If you've seen SAC planning in the past, I'll show you what the maintenance screens look like in PaPM. Again, probably not something for an end user, but someone who's a bit more advanced who wants to maintain these things could probably make sense, but it's not as customizable as you would have in SAC. Obviously, security management, there's a content network, which actually is being renamed right now and reworking it, but like SAC, like DataSphere, PaPM has its own business content that can be uploaded and activated so you can have some fully working processes. Finally, what kind of profiles, what kind of rules can be applied in PaPM? So just quickly, typically the ones where we see this mostly used nowadays with all the other SAP solutions. As a reminder, PaPM has been around for quite a while. It's been migrated to the cloud, still available on premise, and it does quite a few things that other tools have been built to be more efficient on. So today, complex allocations on large volumes and maybe some transfer pricing and other complex calculations like that where SAC may not be sufficient is where you'd still want to use PaPM. Okay, volume, complexity, I'm repeating it again. These are really two keywords where maybe SAC and DataSphere are not sufficient for the task and where you may need some additional support from a solution like this. And the other one where this can also be useful in some cases from a finance data scientist perspective, you have a lot of rules that are much closer to what the data scientist would be used to. More flexibility maybe in some cases than what you have in SAC. So this is something that you would be able to use this. And then from an IT specialist, again, within the process, joins and queries, yes, they can work, but then typically if you really want to join data and bring it together, maybe you would do that on SAP DataSphere. Okay, and then the other areas, yes, they can be used. So you can see risk controllers where they can use some Python logic. Python works in DataSphere, so typically you may want to bring that rule closer to the data and reuse that result in the other tools. And some of the others are pretty financial accountants, financial and product planners typically would work more in SAC nowadays than in PaPM. Okay. Any questions? No, we have nothing on the chat. So I'm going to jump to the tool now. So you've been seeing a few slides. So now just my objective is to give you some insights as to how you may want to use PaPM and how it kind of works with the rest of the environment. So if you're looking at my screen right now, you're probably seeing SAC and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to work with SAC. I've seen SAC. How does PaPM work in there? So as I mentioned, PaPM is recently migrated to cloud, so a few years now, but it hasn't been in it for quite as long as some other tools. But as it's trying to take its spot between DataSphere and SAC, it's been positioned so if you do have all three environments and you go all the way to the top right of your environment, this is where you would see SAP Analytics Cloud, SAP DataSphere, and SAP Profitability and Performance Management. So I'm in SAC right now, pretty much tells me what I'm going to do now. I'm going to jump over to PaPM. So when you jump to PaPM, you first get to that home page where you have your different environments. So here you see one I imported, a kind of a classic model that does corporate budgeting and planning. You will see the process. This is something that nowadays we deliver in SAC planning, and it's really a process that can be decentralized. If you look at end-to-end budget planning, which is one of our other webinars led by another partner at SimpleFi, you'll be able to see that whole process as part of SAC planning, and you'll see how for an end user, it's much easier to involve them so they can do their inputs and review some components in the plan. But I'm going to quickly go through there in a few minutes. Then demo content, I'm quickly also going to go through content we've built around BOM planning and how does that interact with SAC so that you can get some ideas as to how this could be used. But first, as you can see, in this case here, we have the same logic, PaPM, Analytics Cloud, Data Warehouse. So it's the same logic. So it's not the same development teams. So as we can see, the logos are slightly different, but a concept, they're working right now to really unify everything so that someone who ends up in PaPM, in SAC, and DataSphere kind of get the same general feel when they get in the tool. So if you've gone into these other tools recently, this is kind of the standard interface. Obviously right now, PaPM hasn't brought many components here to the left, but they're still here within the tool. and where you can see the different monitors to see what is being run. Obviously, ours is not running a lot of planning right now, so the monitors won't show you much, but you can see what has been run by whom, if you have any errors. So typical monitoring, and then you can schedule and review all of these. And then administration, this is very close to what we can find in SAC, when you can define your teams, your users. Something that's interesting is there used to be the content network, which is actually in my slide, but as of this year, they've kind of migrated to how this works, and now it's called content management. They gave it another name just because since they're transitioning, they just want it to be clear so people understand that it's a new area. So content management, they're trying again to bring it closer to how business content can be shared within the other cloud solutions. So this is evolving. Then connections, different connections that are configured. This is where we configure a connection to our SAC tenant. So when we do a full planning process, we're able to share between the two tools. And then obviously other requirements that are available in here. Actually, one last item I forgot to mention. What's interesting is when you are maintaining PaPM, you're actually able to go in and there's going to be a lot of additional process coming in. So you can go directly into kind of a dashboard where you can configure and say you're going to need more capacity as of that date and everything, and right away you're able to really manage the sizing of your environment. But let's come back now to the overall environment. So here I've corporate budgeting and planning I mentioned earlier, and what I can do, I can click on this, and this is where you see that this interface still is more reminiscent to PaPM on-premise, but again, slowly it is coming closer to cloud environments. So if I click on modeling, I'm going to end up to the corporate and budget planning environment. So anyone who's done corporate planning, you'll see sales and revenue calculations, product cost. You integrate your different sources, overhead financial costs, balance sheet items, cash flow items, all this. And every case, you have your different process. So if I double click on it, I see some cost calculations. Then I'm going to combine information. So we're saying overheads and financial expenses, and then run some allocations based on it. You can also see all the documentation for each of those processes. This is all documented online, and then you're able to run it. But if you're looking at all this, that data is coming from elsewhere. It's a file that's been uploaded. You can see you're aggregating data from the different sources, a lot of different backend processes, but these are a lot of processes you really need to be a power user to understand it. You can integrate some Excel files to see the result within this, but again, it's really made for the power user who really want to optimize his budget with, again, volumes and sources coming from multiple areas, and then you have your all the reports that are kind of fed outside of it at the end. So that kind of feeds every single report, and you can go and see those different reports within a platform. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. The idea is just to show you can really string them out together. But what's interesting is that integrate data source, you're actually able to bring in data from SAC and push it back out to SAC as well. So a lot of these that are a bit, I find, clunky compared to how we can do it in SAC. But when I get to an allocation, it's a lot more powerful what I can do here. So if I go back to the home page, hello, no, sorry, it's the other home. See, again, even I get myself caught by the interface that is not yet fully integrated with the other solution. So I went into corporate budgeting and planning, demo content, and here I'm going to click on this one. So this is a quick one we built just to kind of show that you can go and get the data. Model table is coming from SAC. We are actually setting up queries, and then if I was to want to look at the content of that table. So that table data is coming from SAC. We're seeing the different information, and I could decide to update these different lines or upload a file that will update this information. But in our case, we've integrated it with SAC, so it makes it a lot easier when we're trying to, when we're trying to tweak the process and make small changes. So if instead of that table-like format, what we've actually done, if I go on the SAC side of things, so you have a typical standard input form, again, put together very quickly, but then you have a lot more, the information is formatted in a way that you would have, in this case, year, company code. You can have your filters at the top if you need, so that you can clarify or drill down in some components. You have this queue, and then the BOM components that are part of it, so you can see what volume is being applied. You can see if there are recipe changes in some cases, so you can see those recipe changes over time, and you can really maintain this information. Once it's all done, you update this here. You may want to update component prices as well, net weight, standard price, total cost, and all of these basic information that you need to run your plan. And this is where afterwards you're going to get that information back into PaPM, and you're going to be able to do your different calculations. For something as simple as a join, you want to join two information areas. This is not something that is easy to do in SAC. Looks straightforward, but here I'm joining two different lists, so I can have my BOM component and a SKU description, and I can have some basic information between two of those source tables. I join further, and then I apply my calculation to get my final result. And then obviously you maintain BOM price changes. So this is what's coming from SAC. So it's being fed automatically, and you configure which components you actually want to use in this. And at the top, you can also see what fields your model is using. So you see all these different fields, you configure them at the top, and these are the ones you want to use. And then you have parameters for each one of them. So you see them all on the right here. So if you need to maintain anything, you just maximize it coming here. So not as, I find, not as streamlined and user-friendly as SAC planning can allow you to be, but obviously it allows you to go much further, put a lot of complex coding that you wouldn't be able to do outside of this. And then obviously you can keep on enhancing it, plugging it to different components. As mentioned, today is not a demo. It was really to give you a feel of what PaPM can do for you, and the different kind of complex scenarios that can be managed by them. So I hope today's presentation was able to at least give you insights as to where you could use PaPM. If you want more questions, if you want this slide deck, if you want to go deeper in specific use cases, please ping me on my email, and I'll gladly reply and help you figure out where PaPM could be more use in your environment. And that is it from a presentation perspective. Hope you appreciated it. Hope to see you soon in a subsequent webinar.
For sure. Thank you everyone for joining, and this recording will be posted on our YouTube channels just in case you guys wanted to rewatch and contact us later with any questions. Thank you.